For Love. A story written and illustrated by Cristina Neri. To my children Zoe and Lily, in memory of Nonna Maria, Nonno Bartolo, my parents and all of my relatives resting peacefully on the island of Salina, Sicily. Once upon a sleepy island lived a farmer called Matteo and his young daughter Carina. Not far from the fishing village, but a little higher towards the valley, the two dwelt in a humble house, perched in the shadow of a sleeping volcano. Their house had whitewashed walls, a cane-thatched roof, a round window, and a small terrace that faced towards the eternal sea. For all the comforts they did not enjoy, their life was a happy one. Each morning, as the sun peeped over the mountain's rim, Matteo would rise to wake his daughter from her slumber with a tender kiss upon her head. That morning, he breathed softly into her ear. "Wake up, my love. The birds are calling and our work is waiting for us." Still spellbound by the magic of the retreating moon, the little one heaved a regretful sigh as she bid her dreams goodbye. "Papa, is it morning already?" she mumbled as she dressed with her eyes half closed. Carina sat dozing at the table while Matteo offered her a breakfast, a bowl of goat's milk with bread. Then the sleepy girl put on her shoes and her father tied his hoe to his back. Outside, Matteo lifted the girl onto the donkey, took hold of its sleeve and started towards the peak of the slumbering volcano. They followed the treacherous path that wound tightly against the side of the mountain to the place where their land began. The air was still damp and laden with the crisp fragrance of the wild fennel flowers they passed along their way. Carina spotted her father's terrain above the terraced land that lay before them. The girl looked at the terrace walls that had been built from pebbles spat out from the sea. She imagined they were giant steps that her mother had taken to get to heaven. Indeed, the garden her father had created was full of all things curious to the little girl. Once they arrived, Carina's father crossed to a patch of land that had been cleared and set about hoeing the earth. It was time to plant the beans that would be harvested in the winter. The earth was rich with all the care that his own father and his father's fathers had dedicated to it. He thought about their souls as he started to hoe. His heart beat in tune with his swing. Ba-boom, the hoe rose to the sky. Ba-boom, the hoe fell to the ground. The girl set upon picking capers, the small green flower buds her papa salted to keep for winter days. The perfume of the blossoming caper bushes filled her lungs, and she hummed softly while she worked, inhaling all the love her father exhaled her way. A small bee caught her eye and landed on the flower before her. She studied its little face, its delicate wings, and its strange licking tongue that stretched deeply into the flowers to draw its nectar. She turned to her father and called, "Papa, why do bees exist?" Her father swung his hoe once more before answering. "For love," he replied. "Bees exist for love." Unsure of what her father's words meant, the girl brushed her thoughts aside and continued with her work. Next, the weeds between the tomato plants needed to be cleared and collected into a basket to take home for their goat. Her little hand dove into a tuft and pulled until the earth gave way. Looking at the hole she'd made in the earth, the girl spied a snail retreating with alarm. She picked it up and marvelled at its strange eyes that extended from its body. As it withdrew into its shell, she studied its movements and the delicate nature of the shell. Curious, she called to her father and asked, "Papa, why do snails exist?" Upon hearing his daughter's question, Matteo stopped for a moment, wiped his brow and answered, "For love, my child. Snails exist for love." Without another word, he lifted his hoe and set back to work. What nonsense, Carina thought. Baffled, she abandoned her work. She turned her attention towards the peach tree. As she began to climb its entwining branches, she spotted a luscious peach dangling near her. How the peach glistened! It was as if the sun had put it in her mouth and then hung it out to dry. She picked the peach and drew it to her mouth. Just as she tasted its sweetness, she saw a worm poking its face out from where she'd taken her bite. The girl spat out the peach and yelled out to her father, "Papa, why do worms exist?" Her father swung his hoe once more before stopping for a brief moment. "For love. Worms exist for love," was all he said before he turned back to his toil. Annoyed at her father, the girl huffed, turned her back and made her way towards the furthest part of the garden. By now, the sun had risen well above the horizon and shone brightly through the prickly pear trees that bordered the garden. Chasing a flying beetle, Carina ran towards a prickly pear tree that was still in flower. The child loved the flowering fruit of the prickly pear, and she often wondered how strange it was that something so beautiful could be covered with such vicious spines. A sparkle of light caught her eye. There, between two of the cactus branches, was a spider's web, and caught in it was another beetle struggling to get free. "Poor little thing," the girl thought. "I must save it." Rushing to the beetle's aid, the girl climbed upon the neighbouring terrace wall and carefully leant over the prickly pear tree. Unable to reach, she stretched herself higher, balancing upon her toes with all of the strength she could muster. "Come here, little one," she beckoned. There followed the most alarming wail as she lost her footing and fell head first into the prickly pear's spiny embrace. The girl bawled as her father rushed to her and swept his daughter into his arms. He stroked her hair tenderly as he kissed her brow and held her tight until her sobbing subdued. When she was finally calm, he gently put her down, kissed her once more, and without a single word went back to his hoe. Ba-boom, the hoe rose to the sky. Ba-boom, the hoe fell to the ground. The girl sat dumbfounded. When she found her voice, Carina turned to him and demanded, "But Papa, why do spines exist?" Her father hit the ground with his hoe once more before answering, "For love. Spines exist for love." Again she waited for him to expand, but again her father gave her nothing. Defeated, she whimpered, "But Papa, I don't understand. How can everything exist for love?" Suddenly, the bird stopped chirping, and the sun held its breath, waiting for her father to reply. "My child," he said softly, "nothing can exist without love. On a moonless night, when we cannot see something that is before us, it is as if it does not exist. We need the moon's light to see it. You see, the love in our hearts is our special light, and the things you see exist for our love to bounce off them. Without love, we are blind." Today, the bee gave you the pleasure of admiring him. The snail gave you a moment of wonder. The worm, a cause to enjoy another delicious peach. And best of all, my child, are the spines of the prickly pear. Imagine if the spines did not exist. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to demonstrate how deep my love is for you. And with these words, her father smiled, raised his hoe to the heavens, and swung it once more to the beat of his heart.